Do you like pets? It doesn't matter cats, dogs, hamsters, fish, I love them. There were no pets in my childhood, but as I got older, I realized what role they play in people's lives. They are a real anti-stress and a cure for many diseases. But it seems to me that I have discovered a completely different role for them, which I want to tell you about in this amazing story. Enjoy watching. I am Andrew Houston. As a child, I could never have imagined that one day I would want to have a cat. There was never room for pets in our house, and taking care of them seemed like a pointless waste of time to me. However, everything changed when my then-girlfriend convinced me that we needed a cat. The motivation was simple. I was striving for closeness with her, and so I agreed. After we broke up, she moved away, and I was left alone with this restless, striped cat who became my loathed destroyer, and at the same time a favorite when we went to sleep together. His purring at night softened my heart, and I could not remain indifferent to this little manipulator. Unfortunately, I had to put him down due to illness, but by that time I had already realized that I couldn't live without the sound of cat purring and got 2 kittens, a brother and a sister, both black, with blue and green eyes, respectively. Their size and temperament differed. The male was bigger but calmer, while his sister was energetic and playful. Naming them Bowie and Eamon, I began to take care of them. In any case, when I spoke to them sternly or commanded, they rarely listened, preferring to stay in their own world, but always sought my company. Difficulties arose when I got married. My wife did not share my love for cats and initially hid her feelings, but after the wedding, she began to insist that I get rid of them. I stood my ground, and it became the cause of our first serious argument. In the end, I had my way, but it laid the foundation for passive-aggressive behavior in our marriage. Since then, I began to realize that perhaps I bear some blame in our complex relationship. At the height of our argument, my wife Cindy shared with me a story from her childhood that left her with a deep fear of cats. She told me about an unusual case with an elderly, reclusive woman who was found dead in her home. The woman died of a heart attack, and when she was found, her pet cats, left without food, turned into real monsters, and I think you can imagine what happened. This grim story deeply affected Cindy in her childhood, and instilled in her the fear that a similar fate could befall her if something happened to me, and I could not take care of our cats. Understanding the depth of her fear, I regretfully failed to support her properly at that moment. My laughter and remarks about her fear being ridiculous only intensified her hurt, and did not help her overcome her fear. I realized that it was not the best display of emotional support on my part. Later, we both apologized to each other. I promised Cindy that I would take care of the cats in such a way that she wouldn't have to worry, and she expressed hope that she would eventually come to terms with their presence in our home. Days, weeks, and months passed, and I still considered her fears to be unfounded. However, over time, it became clear that Cindy was truly very afraid of our cats. She tried to get rid of them by leaving the door open, hoping that one of our furry friends would run away and not return. These actions were an expression of her fear and desire to get rid of the problem without resorting to direct conflict with me. I understood that our relationship with the animals and each other required more mutual understanding and respect for each other's feelings. I always preferred to keep the cats indoors, fearing that they might face dangers outside, as it seemed to me that their small brains couldn't adequately assess risks. However, Cindy, perhaps unconsciously, proved otherwise. Our cats, Eamon and Bowie, seemed to be under the protection of higher powers, returning home safe and sound after each of their adventures outside. Their games and entertainments outdoors only convinced me that my fears were unfounded. Everything changed even more when I became engrossed in watching Instagram videos where cat owners shared footage from cameras attached to their pets' collars. These amusing and engaging clips inspired me to try something similar with my cats. It became a kind of ritual. Every day when I returned from work, I would attach mini cameras to Eamon and Bowie and let them outside. They happily explored the surroundings, climbing trees and playing hide and seek. After active games and chases, they would return home, ready to curl up and rest after a day full of events. This experience not only dispelled my fears, but also allowed me to see the world through the eyes of my pets, making our bond even stronger. Our cats quickly got used to the new routine and became very disciplined. They did not leave the house, even when Cindy left the doors wide open, hinting at a chance for escape. It was as if they understood that without my presence in the house and without the cameras attached to their collars, going outside was off limits. This order of things greatly disappointed Cindy, who hoped the cats would run away, but I preferred to ignore her little schemes. When the cats returned home, I would remove the cameras, upload the videos to my phone, edit them, and post them on social media. Although it might have seemed like a strange hobby to some, I already had 500,000 followers. Videos of the cats exploring the world, performing amusing tricks, and making unique sounds became a hit. My followers were thrilled, as evidenced by their comments and likes. The success of my videos did not go unnoticed by camera manufacturers, who offered to upgrade my devices to the latest models for free in exchange for their regular use in videos. This offer was timely, especially considering the new possibilities for filming. One day, returning home earlier than usual due to a snowstorm that promised to be a real challenge for the city, I realized that my cats had never seen snow before. The snow continued to fall, and I decided it would be a great opportunity to capture their first encounter with it. I anticipated their reaction to this new element for them, wondering whether they would be cautious or, on the contrary, would excitedly explore the snowy landscape. This day promised to be special for both me and my followers, who would undoubtedly appreciate the chance to see Iman and Bowie face snow for the first time. The last few winters had been unusually mild, almost without snow, so the prospect of filming my cats frolicking against a snowy backdrop sparked a real surge of enthusiasm in me. Coming home and finding my wife absent, despite her car being in place, added to my surprise. Considering that her office had closed early due to the bad weather, I wondered where she could have gone. Iman and Bowie, who usually greeted me at the door, were invisible this time until I found them, engrossed in watching the snowfall through the window. After I gave the command, the cats immediately headed to the door, ready for a new adventure. After strapping on the cameras, I opened the door for them. Bowie first cautiously looked around, while Iman, impatient for delay, dashed into the snow, leaving behind traces of his little paws. After a brief observation, Bowie followed him, and their snowy epic began. Their play in the snow was the embodiment of joy and freedom. They raced across the yard, creating chaotic tracks, tumbling and jumping like little snow monsters. Watching their fun, I couldn't help but laugh, noting every trick and amusing moment. About 15 minutes later, tired but satisfied, the cats climbed a tree, choosing it as a place to rest. It was the perfect moment to enjoy a cup of coffee and continue watching their well-deserved break. Meanwhile, my neighbor who lived next to us always caused me some dissatisfaction. Perhaps his dislike for my cats or other aspects of our relationship left much to be desired. His name was Jerry. He was our neighbor and a general contractor who had recently completed renovations on his house. His work looked impressive, which prompted us to consider similar improvements to our own home. Additionally, Jerry had an imposing physique and never missed a chance to flirt with Cindy, which always stirred my jealousy. Cindy, on the other hand, brushed off my accusations, claiming that I simply lacked confidence. Furthermore, Jerry was passionate about cycling races and never missed an opportunity to talk about his athletic achievements, even when the weather forced others to stay home. Returning to the present moment, I had just finished drinking coffee when Cindy walked into the house. Her behavior was strange. She immediately asked about the cats, which was uncharacteristic of her, especially with such tension in her voice. Her appearance indicated haste and disarray, as if she had suddenly found herself at home. Her nervous demeanor and avoidance of direct eye contact with me only heightened my suspicion. When I asked why she was interested in the cats, Cindy attempted to divert attention, claiming she was just worried about them because of the weather. However, her rapidly changing emotions and avoidance of eye contact only confirmed my suspicion that she was not being sincere. It became clear to me that she might have been hoping for the cats to be trapped outside in this snowy weather. As Cindy regained her frightened look, I felt that something was off. Her behavior and appearance, reminiscent of a person caught off guard, only reinforced my suspicions. She seemed cornered, trying to find a way out of a situation she unexpectedly found herself in. My thoughts revolved around her strange behavior and possible connection to our cats, who loved to explore the surroundings, including Jerry's house. My thoughts were interrupted by a question to Cindy about her whereabouts in Jerry's house. Her instant blush and confusion only heightened my suspicions. By asking her a direct question, I tried to understand how deep the rabbit hole we had all been dragged into really was. Cindy attempted to divert attention from her perplexity, but her indecision and vague answers only fueled the fire of my curiosity. Deciding to take matters into my own hands, I suggested bringing the cats back inside, anticipating that the footage from their cameras might reveal more than just their antics in the snow. Cindy's reaction, her widened eyes and silent attempt to say something, only confirmed my suspicions that today's videos might uncover much more than the usual amusing adventures of our pets. At that moment, I realized that it would not only be a matter of watching videos for amusing moments, but also the potential discovery of something that could change our family's understanding and trust. It felt like standing on the threshold of a discovery that could shake the foundations of our family's well-being. Stepping onto the porch, I consciously left myself a way back inside, fearing that Cindy might take advantage of the moment and lock me out. My call of "yum, yum, yum," accompanied by the rustle of the food box, instantly caught the cats' attention, and upon hearing the familiar sound, they hurried home. Removing the cameras from them and rewarding them with treats, I followed the usual ritual of feeding. Cindy, standing in the corridor, watched me, her gaze unwaveringly fixed on the cat cameras in my hands. Her concerned expression and troubled look when our eyes met spoke volumes. Offering her to find something to do, I headed to the basement to review the camera recordings. My determination to uncover the truth compelled me to postpone mundane tasks, such as feeding the cats, for later. In the basement, I began the process of syncing the cameras with the app on my phone. I had the task not only to review the footage, but also to decide which ones to share with the world via the internet and which ones to keep out of the public eye. I watched a 10-minute recording, where one of the cats at that moment climbed onto the veranda of my neighbor's house and approached the window, through which it was clearly visible how my beloved wife was having sex with our neighbor. They were lying in bed, and it was evident that Cindy was enjoying himself, but suddenly her gaze shifted to the window where she saw the cat, and apparently realized that her infidelity had just been captured on camera. It was amusing to watch her abruptly jump out of bed and rush to the window unclothed. Then she dashed outside and started chasing the cats, but she didn't catch any as they hid from her in a tree. And the last thing I saw was my wife returning home. I sat in complete shock, contemplating what to do next, but one thing I knew for sure: divorce was inevitable. After hearing footsteps hurrying up the stairs, I quickly rushed from the basement upstairs, holding the phone with the camera on. I managed to photograph Cindy, who, ignoring me, was gathering her belongings. Her face was calm, and there were no visible signs of recent events on her. She took her suitcase, threw on her coat, and casting a glance full of regret at me, left the house without saying a word. I followed her, continuing to record as she slowly drove away, leaving tracks on the snowy road behind her. I thought she was heading to her mother's house, but I was mistaken in my assumptions about how things would unfold. A few days later, when I returned home after meeting with the lawyer, I was greeted by the police. The sheriff's deputy handed me a restraining order, prohibiting me from coming closer to my home than 100 feet. It turned out that Cindy, backed by Jerry's testimony, claimed to fear for her life because of my threats. I was shocked by such an accusation and false testimony, which now put me in a very difficult situation. I had to gather my belongings, which Cindy had thrown onto the porch, into a black trash bag. When I tried to retrieve my personal items, including my computer and cameras, Cindy claimed that I had already taken them, but I hadn't. As for Iman and Bowie, she stated that the cats belonged to her and that she was willing to fight for them in court. The deputy made it clear that it was now a civil matter to be resolved in court. I decided not to argue and left, taking only what I could. What worried me the most was that the cats were left with Cindy. I immediately called my lawyer to discuss how we could challenge the allegations and retrieve the cats. So I had to file a complaint in court to lift the restraining order and retrieve my belongings. My lawyer explained that the divorce process would be complicated and lengthy, especially considering Cindy's desire to make the situation as difficult as possible. He also suggested trying to retrieve the cats through animal control, although there was little chance it would happen quickly. Being at my mom's, I faced the reality that my attempts to seek justice were hindered by weather conditions and closed government agencies. While I didn't have access to the video cameras, I saved the recordings on a flash drive. Reflecting on the possibility of publishing compromising videos, I decided to heed my lawyer's advice and avoid escalating the conflict, which could only distract us from the main goal: resolving the divorce situation. All these events led me to temporarily lose hope of seeing my cats, fearing they might suffer without proper care. However, an unexpected call from Cindy to my mother shook me up. Hearing the satisfaction in her voice and the cats meowing in the background, I realized they were still alive but in danger. Cindy gleefully informed me about her relationship with Jerry and hinted that the cats had been without food for a week. It was a shocking and painful revelation that made me realize how seriously she was taking her revenge. Her words about me supposedly caring more about the cats than her hit me hard, but at the same time confirmed my fears about her potential actions against them. The conversation with Cindy took an unexpected turn when she began mocking cats, claiming they were desperately trying to make contact. Her plans regarding them sounded cruel and merciless. She even mentioned a box of rat poison. But suddenly, the conversation was interrupted by a series of cat screeches and sounds of struggle, leaving me puzzled about what was happening. After a brief moment of silence, I heard Cindy's voice filled with pain and shock from the sudden cat attack. She tried to control the situation but seemed to lose control over it. Panic was evident in her voice as she described how the cats, upon seeing food, lunged at her, causing her to retreat and fall down the basement stairs. Cindy was in despair. Her words sounded helpless as she realized she couldn't move and might have been seriously injured. She pleaded for me to get help, but I was too far away to react immediately. Her condition evoked mixed feelings in me. On one hand, she was someone I once shared life with, and on the other, someone who wished harm upon my beloved pets. The conversation with Cindy continued to take a more bizarre and alarming turn. Her desperation and panic only escalated with each passing minute, especially when she started talking about cats, claiming they could smell blood. Her words about intending to feed them poison sounded like a genuine nightmare, but when it came to concrete actions, it seemed the cats were not playing around, and the situation spiraled out of Cindy's control. Her attempt to mock and threaten the animals turned against her, and now she lay in the basement, unable to move. I understood that despite all our disagreements, leaving her in such a state without help was a difficult decision. But her pleas for help sounded different now, not as manipulation but as sincere desperation. I hung up, or to be more precise, the call got disconnected. I tried calling again, but my phone was out of network coverage. Thinking that her new boyfriend would come to her rescue and help her out, I let go of the situation and continued working and living in my mother's house. A week later, I received a call on my mobile phone from an animal control officer. Finding out that he was a fan of my cats and was concerned about their welfare, I felt supported and understood by someone who genuinely cares about animal well-being. The officer was planning to visit my ex-wife's house the next day, so I decided not to contact her. The next morning, I was saddened to hear from the Animal Control Service that Cindy seemed to have passed away. An employee suggested that I probably wouldn't want to organize an open funeral for my ex-wife, considering that the cats had done their job too well as they were hungry and agitated. This has made it difficult to ascertain the deceased's identity, as the only clues left were teeth. It turned out my wife had a fight with Jerry about a week ago, and he hadn't visited or inquired about her life since then. On that day, he gave a statement and left on his bicycle. After this grim incident, it became clear that I would likely have to say goodbye to Eamon and Bowie, provided they're caught first, of course. When the door was broken into, they darted out of the house like rockets and disappeared into a tree at the neighbors. I contemplated whether I could intercept them while everyone was preoccupied with the investigation around my late wife, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to continue cohabitating with these black creatures. Deciding to postpone that question, I headed towards my former residence, aiming to remain unnoticed. I left my phone with my mother to avoid tracking. I planned to park further away in the shade of trees at the end of the street, and then sneak into the house through the backyard. But things didn't go as planned. As I approached the area, I noticed the absence of cats, and there were many emergency services gathered around my house. It seemed this incident would become the most talked about event of the month, spoken of for years, marveling at this story. I realized it was futile to try to approach my house because of the crowd around it, so I abandoned the idea of catching the escaped cats and headed back, choosing a path through the woods to the canal. This long route led me back to my car, which I had left in a secluded spot after a recent heavy rain. Snow lay everywhere, and finally, I reached the point overlooking the canal. The aqueduct, built to redirect water from the river across a wide stream, has always been a risky spot for cyclists due to the narrow path along its edge. Now, with snow covering everything around, and ice possibly hidden beneath it, the crossing has become even more perilous. As I emerged from the trees and caught sight of the canal, my cats suddenly came into view. perched on the edge of the aqueduct, peering down at the slowly flowing water. At that moment, as I watched them, Jerry appeared on his bicycle from the other side of the aqueduct. He seemed oblivious to the danger, joyfully riding along the snowy path. But his path would intersect with my cats, barely visible behind the railings and fading light of the setting sun. At the last moment, the cats and Jerry noticed each other. The reaction was instantaneous. The cats darted onto the path in front of the bicycle, causing Jerry to reflexively turn the handlebars and lose control. He skidded on the ice, crashed into the railings, and catapulting over them, plunged into the water, followed by his bicycle, which struck him on the head upon impact. As I ran towards the aqueduct, I saw Jerry struggling to get out of the cold stream. The sun had almost disappeared behind the horizon, and it was getting very dark. The stream wasn't very deep, but the water in it was icy, and Jerry was soaked to the bone. Besides, he appeared injured. His leg was severely damaged, and he couldn't put weight on it. Moreover, the steep, icy banks of the stream made his situation even more desperate, especially considering his injury. When he saw me, he started calling for help. I couldn't make out his words over the muffling snow, so I jokingly shouted back that he could try calling Cindy for help. As he recognized me, he attempted to scramble onto the stream bank but slipped back into the water. It occurred to me that it was time for me to leave. Turning towards my car, I noticed my cats sitting on the path, silently watching me, their black faces expressing something akin to recognition. But in an instant, we all felt that our paths diverged. They lingered a bit, stretched, mewed softly as a farewell, and dashed off towards the forest, soon disappearing from view. I thought they would return home when they grew tired of exploring and seek refuge in their hiding spot under Jerry's house. A few days later, when I returned home and cleared away the traces of the stranger's presence in the bedroom and basement, replacing the bed with a new one, I heard from a neighbor that a tourist had found the body of our former neighbor on the stream bank. His limbs were frostbitten, and he died from hypothermia. They say hypothermia takes lives quickly and painlessly, as if you're falling asleep, peacefully contemplating something. Later, reflecting on what had happened, I couldn't understand why people consider encountering a black cat a bad omen. Personally, I've always had luck with them, although now I think my next pet will be a hedgehog or maybe a hamster.
That's the end of the story. Why do you think the main character's wife decided to cheat on him? Why didn't the main character save his wife and her lover? Do you think it is possible to justify the inaction of the main character? Write your opinion in the comments, and it will be interesting for us to read it. Also, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and put likes so as not to miss new, equally exciting stories of betrayal and revenge. Good luck!